This is Leadership in Action, and I'm Mark Stiles, your host. Join me as we delve deep into the passions, expertise, and experiences of Boston area innovators. Sponsored by the Boston chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization, this is Leadership in Action. Hey folks, welcome back to Leadership in Action, your Boston chapter of EO's podcast. Today's guest is a people-centered leader. She creates value and connection through the inspiring power of art. She acknowledges the essential roles of partners and audiences in creating transformative work that impacts spaces and communities. EO Boston, she's a brand new member, so look out for her at the upcoming events. She joined in December. She is the co-founder at Alchemy Station. Please meet Kate Anderson. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you, Mark.
And welcome to EO.
Thank you. It's been great so far.
Cool. So Q1, question number one, what is the most positive lesson that you've learned while running your business?
Right. So the most positive lesson I've learned, so we're only 18 months young, my business. So very new business here. And I think the most positive lesson I've learned so far is really that kind of power of personal agency, of kind of having a dream, wanting to do something, thinking about it, and just kind of that like life force inside of you to take, one step at a time, and just kind of keep moving forward. It can all feel very overwhelming, I think, starting a business, and showing up for yourself is hard work.
Showing up, as they say, that's 90% of it, right? Is simply showing up. So how did you get Alchemy going? What's the story? How did we get here?
Yeah, so I have been in the art consulting space for quite some time, for almost 20 years. And I'd say during the pandemic, really early in the pandemic, like the first day of lockdown, I was home. I have children. They're now 13 and 10. So I guess, what were they? I don't know, 9 and 6 or something. I don't know, everything shifted for me. I think my life was very, very busy. And I was commuting. I was kind of just working kind of on that hamster wheel. And that moment of pause, I knew I had to just make a lot of changes. I felt so relieved to be in control of my schedule around my children. So that was kind of the first step for me, to just take a pause from everything I was doing. So I left my long-term career and really just decided to take some time off and to do some inner work and reevaluate kind of everything I was doing. And in that break, I was almost surprised to move back into the same space I had left, but kind of enter back in through my own lens, aligned with my own values. And I have a great partner. So someone who I had also worked with took a pause, and we reconnected and just started to share our vision and our dreams, and one step at a time, we started this business.
That's really cool. And I hear that a lot, that COVID was kind of a reframe. So tell us about that journey where you were not working the hamster wheel and hadn't really created the vision. What type of inner work did you do?
Yeah. So I did quite a few things, but the first step was actually at a COVID wedding. A friend of mine had about 30 folks at a wedding during the pandemic, and a friend of hers I met was a hypnotherapist. And I started chatting with her about her work, and I'm super curious about things. And I knew I wanted to make a lot of shifts, and I didn't feel like I have like childhood trauma or anything major. I just felt stuck, and I didn't really know where I wanted to go. And what I wanted to do. So it started with this woman, Raquel DeRoe is her name. She's actually on the North Shore. We did it all over Zoom. And she helped me kind of do these mind maps of like the life I wanted to live. It was really based around how I wanted to feel, and the relationships and how I wanted to feel within my relationships. So that was kind of an interesting transition period of mine where through that process. And it was cool doing hypnosis. I don't know. Have you ever done hypnosis?
I don't think so.
No.
Not that I'm aware
Yeah.
of.
It's not what I thought.
Yeah.
And I'm a big meditator, and it is a lot like being in a guided meditation.
Okay.
And when you're in that guided meditation, like you're awake, you could walk away if you want to, but you're kind of just allowing yourself to be guided through the process. And she's asking questions, and through the questions, you almost time travel, like you go to different points in your life, or maybe you were having an experience that stayed with you, like a self-doubt or a limiting experience, and she kind of brings you back to that space, and then works through these like guided meditations to help you listen and kind of rewire your beliefs around those things. So that really helped me. It became like an accountability of really making the changes, of leaving my job and taking that space. So yeah, that was the first step, which then led me to a year-long program in mindfulness and presence through the Enneagram, which do you know what the Enneagram is?
No, please tell us.
Yeah, so I know a lot of EOers are aware of DISC, the personality typing system within organizations. So the Enneagram is very similar. It's an overarching personality typing system. And it has really kind of ancient spiritual roots. So it goes back to the Kabbalah. It's represented in Homer's Odyssey. It was a secret teaching of Jesuit Catholic priests and monks. And in the 70s, it started to get shared more. So I think if you go to the roots of Myers-Briggs and DISC and all of those things, this is kind of that ancient work, which there was a teacher, I had been a fan of this work for a long time. And I always thought I could take like a weekend workshop and piece it together. But because of the pandemic, they had figured out that they could teach it, a year-long program. And I trained with folks from all around the world. There were 200 of us studying with these teachers. Yeah. So anyway, it's that there are many podcasts all about the Enneagram, but when you forget all the personality typing systems, the core teaching is your 3 centers of intelligence, your body, your gut, your heart, and your mind. And we had a daily practice. It's a 7-minute meditation where you're, 2 minutes in your gut, 2 minutes in your heart, and 2 minutes in your mind. And most of us default to one of those. So I'm naturally a head center.
Okay.
And my husband's naturally a body center. Most artists are heart centers. And the training is the more you practice on activating those, like you get really clear. And sorry, I'm going deep fast.
This is where I wanted to go.
Okay.
My notes here say go deep from the pre-call.
Okay.
So let's go.
Great. Yeah. So as you start to do that practice, I think that what do I want to do? Why am I doing it? All of that starts to become really clear, especially as a head center for me, like the monkey mind was quieting down, and I'd get really, learn to be really present in my body, present with my family. And listening to that.
What mind did you say?
The monkey mind. The
That's
monkey
what I
mind.
thought.
Like just just the busy. I'm a forward thinker. I'm always, whether it's planning or worrying, I'm naturally in that space.
Whichever you want to frame it at the time, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that really just brought so much information to me about myself and my values and what was important. And in that program, we had a capstone project. So actually my business plan centered around the head, the heart, and the body, and kind of the action we take, the steps we, the life force energy, like what we need to show up and do, and really tapping into the heart, what's really in there for you. And then with that is like the logic, and the mind starts to have this like clear thinking. So anyway, it's a long-winded answer. But
well, it's an ongoing journey, right? So it's a beautiful story. So the capstone, was that your business plan, or are those two separate things?
Yeah, I mean, it
became
became it. So I have a partner, Susie, who's awesome. And we had a history of working together. So in that time, I was definitely down this path, and I'd say it was more of a vision. I'm a visual person. I work in the arts. So I literally made like a visual roadmap of how I saw this business going. And and she, like, we would get together once a week and compare notes, and she definitely brought her ideas to the table as well. But through this kind of the training and the schoolwork I was doing, I was kind of always coming back to the three centers. And even our name Alchemy comes from like three forces creating transformation. So coming to those three forces, always it's how things transform. So yeah, it was, not the financial business plan, but the vision.
Yeah. And that's where it all begins, right? Is the vision, the idea. So help me understand what exactly Alchemy does do.
Sure. So we are art consultants. We primarily work with folks in new construction. So whether it's a real estate developer, a healthcare, hospital that's being built, even a corporation. We just completed a big law firm's office in DC. So even if someone's relocating and designing a new space, we're the liaison between the building owner, the developer, and the artwork that goes into the space.
Very cool. So where the art and the business meet, that's a unique place to be.
Yeah. Yeah,
because they tend to run in very opposite directions sometimes, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is kind of our our special sauce, or our special gift, really, is
superpower.
Superpower. Yeah. I was a studio art major, so I'm a painter by,
Cool.
It's buried in me right now. I don't do a lot of it. And then my partner is an art historian. So we speak the artist language, and that is a language from the heart. And then we are business people. So, when it comes to dealing, especially with new construction, deadlines, budgets, like the incentives of the building or the goals of the building, really getting a clear sense of the purpose of the space that's being built. We're there to kind of help them see what types of artwork will help them reach their goals. So sometimes it's their mission and values. Art's a great way to tell your story. And it's also an opportunity to connect with community. So yeah, we're there. We work with the developer on figuring out, their goals for the space, and their budget. And then we introduce them to, we do a ton of research on artists that we feel are aligned with their goals.
That's really cool. So take the developer outside, because that's more the common, but when you are working with a business, how deep do you get with their core values? Core values are very important to the EO community. How much strategy goes into that, and how willing are they to share so that you can understand how to help?
We try to go as deep as they'll let us.
Yeah.
And what's kind of beautiful, since I've been in this world for quite some time, I would say pre-pandemic, people were more interested in decorating and maybe impressing people with art. And now, like, they really, there was a big shift, and they really get that it's an opportunity for kind of not just displaying their values, but putting them to work. So there's so many artists, like, say, a company is interested in innovation. In Boston, there's a lot in this life science sector. So we're finding artists that have work that connect to innovation and technology or science. We have artists that work with, AI, and also diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a really great way to kind of activate and connect with folks in your community. So we really go deep. We actually design an art mission statement. So after interviewing with them, we create kind of pillars based on the information we've gotten. And then when we're presenting artists, we're representing that back to them and showing them how they're connected and aligned with their values. And it really helps because it's so subjective. So it kind of helps bring a team together and see why certain artists belong in the space.
I love it. So how did you find EO, and why?
Sure. So actually, one of the members of my team, Molly Proctor, her father, Dan Shearer, is an EO member. And they're from Duxbury. And I'm in Marshfield. We're Marshfield connection. And Dan invited me to an event last year. So we were only maybe 3 months into the business, and Molly was working as like an independent contractor. And he invited me to an event that was at Levitate.
Oh, yeah.
And there I saw Dave
Big
Will,
wave.
who's my neighbor. Yeah. So that was, and then now I see Dave when I was walking the dog. So it was just kind of a a slow conversation over the course of a year of, I knew I needed, my background's in sales and so is my partner's. So neither of us had, management and finance and all of those other pieces. So those education days were the big push for me to join.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great education to be had. And I'll share that Dave Will is my connection to EO as well. He identifies the inner entrepreneur in people and helps pull that out of them, which I think is very commendable. And shout out Dave Will and Learning Share right now. Thank you,
Yeah.
my brother. So do you consume podcasts? Do you listen to other podcasts?
Yeah, I'm a huge podcast listener. I was
Cool.
kind of joking. I'm like an early podcast listener. I remember the days of being at like dinner parties and asking people what their favorite podcast was. And I think it was due to the commute that I used to have. But yeah, I podcasts and audiobooks all day.
What's a podcast that you have to listen to every week? Do you have any?
Yeah, so On Being with Krista Tippett.
Okay.
It's an NPR podcast. I think it used to be. Now I think she has her own kind of production company. That is a podcast that I call it, it's my church basically. Like if I
Cool.
I go on a walk, can be lean towards spiritual poetry, but like also innovators and really incredible guests.
On Being.
On Being.
What a great title.
Yeah.
Do you miss out on podcasts now that you're not commuting now?
I do. Yeah. and we actually have a space that is lining up hopefully for us this summer in the city. And I'll probably go in a few days a week and I'm thinking, at least I'll get my podcast and my education back. But I walk the dog now. So that was my replacement. I got a dog during the pandemic and now that's my podcast time. Yeah.
COVID dogs. They were much aplenty. So getting going, starting up, new, what's exciting you? What's giving you pause and hesitation?
Sure. So I'd say that like the honeymoon might officially be over. We were in the first year. It was so fun. I'm a vision person. So like everything about building the dream was really exciting. And now we're like definitely in it. We're deep in the business. And we had a few contractors that we just shifted in January to make employees. So cool. I'm learning all of this kind of management stuff right now. So I would definitely say we're in the weeds at the moment of just getting like that Crabtree book that's at education day. Like we're in that spot where I know it's going to be really hard as we're growing and a capacity and systems and we're in that. That's what's giving me not pause. It's exciting me, but it's also like it's challenging to just get, that whole we're in it. Like we really have to keep moving and figuring out how to pause and evaluate and plan.
Well, I think EO is going to be definitely a value add to your business planning. I learn something new every day, every meeting, every learning, every social event, everything. It's this awareness, this awakening, if you will. And I applaud you for making the decision, and I cheer you on as you grow with your folks at EO. You mentioned AI, so art and AI. Can we dig into that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's definitely a new thing, and I know there's a lot of pause around it. I think you had said to me on our pre-call, the AI. I didn't make it to the AI talk for EO. But that you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to folks who know how to use it. And I think from a business standpoint, I love the idea of just efficiencies that our capacity for creativity. Like creativity is born out of boredom. So like the freer we are from sending emails, taking notes, the more space all humans have to be creative. And I think with artwork, there is always this fear of like the computers taking over and being the artist. But we had a cool experience, and I want to say it was the first or the largest in the US, but there was a life science developer in Watertown over by Arsenal Yards. 100 Forge. They had an outdoor park, and they wanted, even though it was a private space, they want the public to experience it. And that was an example of going through a bunch of artists and thinking about innovation and the types of tenants that are going to occupy the building. And we ended up collaborating with this artist. And his name is tricky. It's Vulcan Alcongalu. He's the head of innovation at Nike out in Portland, Oregon, but he's also a sculptor. And he collaborates with AI. And he designed a 20-foot carbon 3D printed sculpture.
Cool.
That with a company that makes objects that go on the moon, called Branch Technologies. So that was an exciting thing to be a part of, like one of the first large outdoor sculptures generated. There was a human behind it, but he collaborated with the AI, which then created the file for the 3D printer to build it.
Thus the shout out to Luis Cortez, EO Boston, who coined that phrase, right? It's not AI that's going to take your job. It's this artist who knows how to work with AI who's going to take your job, whether it's art or business or otherwise. That's really fascinating. Is there a level of fear within the art community that that independence, that subjectivity, that authenticity is going to be diluted through computer?
Yeah. It was, I mean, as I'm not a practicing artist at the moment, I haven't been, I'm observing, I guess, from afar a little bit more, but I remember when something went out, maybe it was like 6 months ago or a year ago even, where everyone was changing their profile picture to an AI generated portrait of themselves. And a lot of artists were like, don't do that. Like I just remember seeing this kind of like uprise and folks saying like, just outsourcing, a portrait or something to AI is a threat. But I think as we evolve, my personal opinion is as we evolve, we can't fight future. We just have to learn how to lean into it. And I think that there's going to be a desire and a yearning for things to have the hand of the artist and the creativity and the humanity and things. So I do think that there's going to be always a draw to art that's, created. Like even the piece we did in Watertown, I mean, that was a collaboration with AI with intention because it was a piece about innovation. But I don't think every sculpture is going to lose its, way to AI.
I loved what you said too about the boredom is what is the birth to creation. And one of those things that, and I don't want to keep harping on the fact that you weren't at the AI learning. However, one of the things that I was relayed to me was there was a group that had been dialed into AI early on, 18 months, using every possible efficiency. And they were able to track that they're 30% more efficient as a company because of utilizing resources found in AI. And he was very clear. He said, with that 30%, we're not laying off people.
Right.
We're now giving them the space for research and development, creative time, strategy time, and they've blocked it out specifically. And that reminds me of that when you say, now we have that extra time. Now we have that time to be mindful. We have that time to think inwardly and do more, right? Elevate, delegate, elevate. You're just simply delegating to a computer at this point.
Yeah. I think it's really exciting. I mean, it is, everything's scary a little bit, but it's super exciting to think about because I think, time is our most precious resource. So, yeah.
Fascinating. So you're busy, you got the startup, you got family. What do you got your COVID dog. What else do you do for hobbies?
Yeah, so I've gotten very into yoga.
Cool.
I always had been, but recently I went on a women's retreat with a group from the South Shore. So I feel like kind of a new community budding there with it's less of an independent thing now and more of a group activity. So I'm a big fan of yoga.
A yogi.
Yeah.
I love it. So that's great. Time out. So
Right.
Kate, people are gonna see you at the EO events. And if they don't, what would be the best way for them to connect with you?
Good question. It's I would say that honestly, the place I spend most of my time from like a social media standpoint is Instagram. So we're alchemystation.art. That's mostly because it's a visual medium. So we're always finding artists there. I'd say that our followers are probably more artists than clients. But we spend most of our time there. I'm trying to get better about LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn. It's Kate O. Anderson, I think. I just find LinkedIn, it's not my language. So
I get that, right? And
yeah,
it's where that business and the art kind of come together. Where is it? Well, it's visual. So we're at Instagram, and that Instagram handle is Alchemy Visual, you say?
it's alchemystation.art, A-R-T.
Alchemystation.art. All right. I will
Yeah,
be certain to follow that, and I'll connect with you on LinkedIn to get that LinkedIn account rolling,
I
because that
know.
business is important. That balance, you're
It
the one,
is.
you're in that impossible role of balancing art with business. So we may as well
Yeah.
fill up that LinkedIn connections and see where that goes for you. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you,
joining.
Mark.
Thank you for
Yeah,
joining EO. More importantly, thank you for sharing your story here on Leadership in Action. We really appreciate it.
great. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Folks, thank you for listening. We appreciate you very much, and we will see you soon. If you think about someone that might be a good connection for Kate, share it with them. Share it with anyone who you think would enjoy this conversation. Thanks again, Kate.
Thank you.
Folks, this has been another exciting episode of Leadership in Action, your Boston chapter of EO's podcast. We hope you enjoyed, and we will speak with you next time. Be well, folks.
Leadership in Action is sponsored by the Boston chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization. As the world's only peer-to-peer network exclusively for entrepreneurs, EO helps transform the lives of those who transform the world.